My name is Miriam Hartwell, and I'm 70 years old. I thought the worst day of my life was burying my husband. I was wrong. The worst day was standing in the doorway of the beach house I built with my own savings, watching my daughter-in-law scream at me like I was trash. "Why is this old leech here? There's no room for you." Her words cut deeper than any knife. My son, my own son, stood behind her, silent, letting it happen. I smiled. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. What I did next didn't just turn her world upside down. It exposed every lie, every scheme, and every ugly truth she thought she'd buried. Before I tell you how I took back my life, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Leave a comment below. Let me take you back to where it all began, the day I realized I'd been living for everyone but myself. It was a Friday afternoon in mid-July when I drove up to my Cape Cod beach house. The Atlantic breeze carried the scent of salt and seagrass through my open car window, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. I'd been planning this trip for weeks. Just me, a stack of novels, and the sound of waves. After 40 years of working as a paralegal, after raising Garrett alone, after losing my husband to cancer when our boy was only 3, I figured I'd earned a quiet weekend. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into the driveway. That's when I noticed the other cars. 3 of them. A silver SUV I recognized as Garrett's, a flashy red convertible, and a beaten-up pickup truck with Massachusetts plates I'd never seen before. My stomach tightened. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. This was supposed to be my time. I grabbed my overnight bag from the passenger seat and walked up to the front door. Music thumped from inside, loud, bass-heavy stuff that made the windows rattle. I could hear laughter, lots of it. I fumbled with my keys, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The scene that greeted me stopped me cold. My living room, the one I'd furnished piece by piece over decades, the one with the white linen couch I'd saved for months to buy, looked like a frat house. Empty beer bottles littered the coffee table. Red Solo cups sat on every surface. Someone had spilled what looked like wine on my cream-colored rug, the stains spreading like a bruise. The sliding glass door to the deck stood wide open, letting sand blow across my hardwood floors. And there, sprawled across my furniture, like they owned the place, were Skylar, my daughter-in-law, and 2 people I assumed were her siblings. A woman with bleached blonde hair and too much makeup lounged on my couch, scrolling through her phone. A man in his 30s, tattooed and scruffy, had his feet, his dirty feet, propped up on my ottoman. Garrett sat in the corner chair, hunched over his phone, not looking up. "Skylar?" I said, keeping my voice polite despite the fury rising in my chest. "Honey, I didn't know you'd be here. Did Garrett mention—" She cut me off without even turning around. "Why is this old leech here?" The room went quiet. The blonde woman, Bryn, I'd later learn, snickered. The man, Tate, grinned. Skylar finally turned to face me. Her eyes were cold, flat, no warmth, no surprise, just irritation. "There's no room for you, Miriam. We're using the house this week." I felt like I'd been slapped. "This is my house," I said slowly, carefully. "I built it." Skylar rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Garrett told me you're practically senile. You can barely take care of yourself. Maybe it's time to think about a nursing home." Bryn and Tate laughed. Actually laughed. I looked at my son. "Garrett?" He didn't meet my eyes, just kept staring at his phone, his jaw tight, his face red, but he didn't say a word. Didn't defend me, didn't tell his wife she was out of line. My chest felt like someone had wrapped iron bands around it, squeezing tighter and tighter. My own son, my boy, letting this woman humiliate me in my own home. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. Then I smiled. Not a real smile, a decision smile. "I see," I said softly. "I'll leave you to it then." I turned and walked out, closing the door behind me with a quiet click. But as I walked back to my car, my mind was already racing, already planning, already remembering exactly who I used to be before I spent 40 years putting everyone else first. And what I remembered was this. I didn't just work as a paralegal. I specialized in estate planning. I knew every trick, every loophole, every legal protection available. Skylar had no idea what she'd just started. I drove to the Sandpiper Motel, a modest little place about 3 miles down the coast highway. The room was small and dated. Floral bedspread, thin curtains, the faint smell of bleach and ocean air. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared out the window at the parking lot, my hands trembling. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not because of Skylar. I'd suspected for a while that she didn't like me, that she saw me as an obstacle rather than family. But Garrett, my Garrett, the baby I'd held through colic and nightmares, the boy I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college, the man I'd bailed out time and time and time again, he just stood there. I grabbed a tissue from the nightstand and wiped my eyes, forcing myself to breathe, to think. The tears could come later. Right now, I needed to remember. I thought back to all the times Garrett had called me over the past 5 years, always with that apologetic tone, always with an emergency. The car that broke down and needed a new transmission. $4,500. The roof leak at his apartment. $6,200. The credit card debt from unexpected medical bills. $12,000. The business investment that would definitely pay off. $18,000. On and on and on. I'd given him over $75,000. Money I'd saved from decades of careful budgeting. Money I'd planned to use for retirement. Maybe a few trips before my knees gave out completely. And every time I handed over a check, Skylar had been there in the background. I could hear her voice through the phone sometimes, coaching him. Tell her it's urgent. Remind her you're her only son. She has plenty saved up. I'd been a fool, a blind, trusting fool. But here's what Skylar didn't know. When I bought this land in 1985, when I hired contractors to build this house, when I signed every document and paid every bill, I did it smart. The house wasn't just in my name. It was held in irrevocable living trust, with me as the sole trustee and beneficiary during my lifetime. Garrett was named as the successor beneficiary, meaning he'd inherit after I died. But until then, this house was mine, legally protected, untouchable. And I'd never told Skylar that. She probably assumed it was just a regular deed, easy to challenge, easy to manipulate. I also remembered something else, something that made my blood run cold. 3 months ago, Skylar had asked me about my estate plan over dinner. So like, who gets what when you pass away, she'd said, trying to sound casual. Garrett's your only kid, right? So he gets everything? I'd changed the subject, uncomfortable with the bluntness. Now I understood why she'd been asking. I opened my laptop, pulled up my email, and typed a message to Roland Finch, the attorney I'd worked with for 15 years before I retired. Roland, I need to see you tomorrow. It's urgent. I hit send and closed the laptop. Then I lay back on that motel bed and stared at the ceiling, my mind whirring with plans, strategies, legal protections I could activate. Skylar wanted to play games? Fine, let's play. But she was about to learn that this old leech had sharper teeth than she ever imagined. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Garrett's face. Not the man he was now, weak, silent, controlled, but the boy he used to be. The one who'd hold my hand crossing the street. The one who'd made me terrible Mother's Day cards with crooked hearts and misspelled words. The one who'd cried in my arms when the other kids teased him about not having a dad. Where had that boy gone? When had he disappeared? I knew the answer, of course, 6 years ago when he met Skylar at some marketing conference in Boston. He'd been so excited when he brought her home to meet me. She was beautiful, I'd give her that. Sleek dark hair, perfect makeup, designer clothes. She'd smiled and called me Mom right away, brought me flowers, complimented my cooking. But I'd felt it even then, something off, something calculated about the way she touched Garrett's arm, the way she steered conversations, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Still, I'd kept my mouth shut. I wanted Garrett to be happy. I wanted to believe I was just being an overprotective mother, jealous of losing my son to another woman. After they married, things changed. Slowly at first. Garrett stopped calling as often. When he did, the conversations were shorter, more stilted. Skylar always seemed to be in the background, listening. They stopped coming to Sunday dinners, stopped visiting on holidays. And every interaction we did have felt transactional. They needed something. I gave it. They left. And I let it happen because I was terrified of losing him completely. The next morning, I drove to Roland's office in Hyannis. He was waiting for me when I arrived, coffee already brewed, his reading glasses perched on his silver hair. Roland Finch was 58, sharp as a tack, and one of the best estate planning attorneys on the Cape. We'd worked together for years before I retired, me handling the paperwork, him handling the legal strategy. "Miriam," he said, standing to hug me, "you sounded stressed in your email. What's going on?" I told him everything. The scene at the house, Skylar's words, Garrett's silence, the money I'd given over the years, the questions Skylar had asked about my estate plan. Roland listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Miriam, I need to ask you something important. Did you ever add Garrett or Skylar to the deed of the house?" "No," I said firmly. "The house is in my revocable living trust, just like we set up in 1985. I'm the sole trustee and beneficiary during my lifetime. Garrett's the successor beneficiary after I die, but until then, he has no legal claim to it." Roland exhaled, relief visible on his face. "Good. That's your first line of defense. The trust protects you." He paused, studying me carefully. "But Miriam, I have to warn you. If they're calling you senile, if they're questioning your capacity, they might try something more aggressive." "Like what?" "They could file for guardianship or conservatorship. That's a legal process where they'd ask a court to declare you mentally incompetent and appoint Garrett or Skylar as your guardian. If they succeed, they'd have control over your assets, your finances, your medical decisions, everything." The room tilted. "They can do that?" "They can try. And if they get a doctor to sign off on a diagnosis saying you're impaired, they might have a case." He leaned forward. "We need to get ahead of this. Document everything. Prove you're of sound mind and prepare for a fight." I met his eyes. "What do we do first?" Roland smiled. A cold, strategic smile I remembered from 100 courtroom battles. "We prepare, and we document everything." 2 days later, I drove back to the house. I needed to pick up some personal items, my medications, a few changes of clothes, my mother's jewelry that I kept in the bedroom safe. I'd called ahead, leaving a voicemail on Garrett's phone. No answer. Typical. I pulled into the driveway around 2 in the afternoon. The other cars were still there. Through the windows, I could see movement inside. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The house looked worse than before, much worse. The wine stain on the rug had spread and darkened. Someone had left a pizza box on the kitchen counter, grease seeping through onto the marble I'd spent a fortune installing. A trash bag sat by the door, overflowing, flies buzzing around it. The smell hit me like a wave. Stale beer, old food, unwashed bodies. My hands curled into fists. I walked toward the bedroom, trying to ignore the damage, trying to just get what I needed and leave. But before I made it down the hall, Skylar appeared in the living room doorway, a champagne flute in her hand, at 2 in the afternoon. "Back already?" she said, her voice dripping with mock surprise. "Didn't I tell you to leave?" I kept my voice level. "I'm just getting a few things, Skylar. Then I'll go." She stepped in front of me, blocking the hallway. "You know what, Miriam? Garrett and I have been talking. We think it's time you signed the house over to us. You're too old to manage it. It's falling apart. You can't keep up with maintenance. It's for your own good, really." I stared at her. The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity. "This house is not falling apart," I said quietly. "It's being destroyed by you." Skylar's smile widened. "See? That's exactly what I mean. You're confused, paranoid. You can't even see that we're trying to help you." "I'll think about it," I said, forcing the words out through gritted teeth. I couldn't afford to explode. Not yet. Not until Roland and I had everything in place. "You'd better," Skylar said, taking a sip of her champagne. "Or we'll have to take other measures, legal measures. We've already talked to some people." There it was, the threat, laid out plain as day. I stepped around her and walked to the bedroom. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed my pill bottles from the nightstand, stuffed some clothes into a small bag, and opened the safe to retrieve my mother's jewelry, the only thing I had left of her. When I came back out, Skylar was still standing in the hallway, watching me with that cold, calculated expression. "You have no idea what's coming," I wanted to say, but instead I just smiled, the same smile I'd given her 2 days ago, the one that said nothing and everything at once. I walked past her, out the door, and back to my car. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Skylar stood on the front porch, arms crossed, watching me go. She had no idea what she'd just done. She'd threatened me, given me a timeline, confirmed exactly what Roland had suspected, and now I had all the ammunition I needed to destroy her. The next morning, I met Roland at his office again. This time, he had a legal pad covered in notes and a stack of documents spread across his desk. "Okay," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we need to establish baseline competency. I'm referring you to Dr. Helena Voss. She's a psychiatrist who specializes in geriatric evaluations. She'll run a full cognitive assessment, memory tests, decision-making capacity, the works. If they try to claim you're impaired, we'll have independent medical proof that you're not." I nodded. "When?" "I already made the appointment, tomorrow at 10. Fast. Miriam, if they're serious about filing for guardianship, they'll move quickly. We need to move faster." He slid a document across the desk. "This is a durable power of attorney. I want you to sign it, naming me as your agent. That way, if they do try something, I have legal authority to act on your behalf immediately." I signed without hesitation. Roland had been my friend and colleague for 15 years. I trusted him with my life. "Second," Roland continued, "we need evidence of their intent. You said Skylar threatened legal measures. I believe her. If they're planning to file for guardianship, they'll need a doctor's statement claiming you're incompetent. And if they can't get a legitimate doctor to sign off, they might look for one who will." "You mean fraud?" "Exactly." He paused. "Miriam, I know this is uncomfortable, but I need to ask, how do you feel about surveillance?" "In my own house?" "Yes. We'd install small, discrete cameras, just video, no audio, to stay within Massachusetts two-party consent laws. It's legal for security purposes on your own property. If Skylar and Garrett discuss their plans on camera, that's evidence we can use." I thought about it. The idea of spying on my own son made my stomach turn. But then I remembered his silence, his complicity, the way he'd let Skylar humiliate me without saying a single word. "Do it," I said. Roland made a call. Within an hour, a private investigator named Marcus Webb showed up at the office, late 40s, ex-military, quiet and professional. He explained the equipment, 3 tiny cameras, each no bigger than a button, with built-in Wi-Fi that would stream footage to a secure server I could access from my laptop. "We'll place them in common areas," Marcus said. "Living room, kitchen, entryway. Nowhere private like bedrooms or bathrooms. That would cross legal lines. You'll be able to watch live or review footage anytime." "How soon can you install them?" I asked. "Today, if you can get me access to the house." I still had my key. And Skylar didn't know I had copies of the alarm code. We drove to the house in Marcus's van, waiting until I saw all 3 cars leave. Garrett's SUV, Skylar's convertible, Tate's truck. They were probably out to lunch, spending more of my son's money. Or mine. Marcus worked fast. 20 minutes later, the cameras were in place, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. He synced them to my laptop and showed me how to access the feed. "You're all set," he said. "If they're planning something, you'll know about it." That night, back at the motel, I opened my laptop and logged into the camera system. The feeds were crystal clear: living room, kitchen, entryway, all empty and quiet. I watched for an hour, then 2. Around 9 p.m., the front door opened. Skylar and Garrett walked in, followed by Bryn and Tate. They were laughing about something, carrying takeout bags. They sat down at the kitchen table. Skylar pulled out her phone, scrolling through something, then looked up at Garrett and said something. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read her expression. She was planning something, and I was going to catch every second of it. It happened 3 nights later. I'd been monitoring the camera feeds obsessively, watching hours of mundane footage, Skylar and her siblings lounging around, Garrett working on his laptop, the 4 of them eating, drinking, making a mess of my home. Nothing incriminating, just infuriating. But that Thursday night, around 11 p.m., something changed. Skylar and Garrett sat alone at the kitchen table. Bryn and Tate had gone to bed. I watched as Skylar leaned forward, gesturing emphatically. Garrett's body language was tense, shoulders hunched, head down. She was pressuring him. Even without audio, I could see it. I leaned closer to my laptop screen, wishing I could read lips. Skylar pulled out her phone, typed something, then showed Garrett the screen. He shook his head. She slammed her hand on the table. He flinched. Then she stood up, walked around behind him, and put her hands on his shoulders. Not affectionately, but possessively. Dominantly. She leaned down and said something directly into his ear. Garrett closed his eyes, and after a long moment, he nodded. My heart was racing. What had she just convinced him to do? The next morning, I called Roland. They're planning something. I saw them arguing last night. She was forcing him to agree to something, but I couldn't tell what. Keep watching, Roland said. If they're moving forward with guardianship, they'll need documentation, a doctor's report, financial records, witness statements. They'll have to talk about logistics. He was right. And that night, I got exactly what we needed. Friday evening, all 4 of them gathered in the living room. Skylar sat on the couch, her phone in hand. Garrett sat beside her, looking miserable. Bryn was on the armchair, painting her nails. Tate sprawled on the floor, eating chips. Skylar talked animatedly, gesturing at her phone. Then she held it up, showing the others something on the screen. Bryn laughed. Tate gave a thumbs up. Garrett just stared at his hands. I watched, helpless and furious, as Skylar made a phone call. She talked for several minutes, smiling, nodding. When she hung up, she said something to the group. Garrett looked up, alarmed, and said something back. Skylar waved him off dismissively. I grabbed my own phone and called Roland, keeping my eyes glued to the screen. Roland, they just made a call. I think they're setting something up. Can you see any details? Numbers? Names? No, but wait. Skylar had just sent a text message. She held her phone at an angle where the camera could catch the screen. I squinted, trying to make out the words. Roland, I can see part of a text message. It says, how much to get a... I can't see the rest. Wait, she's scrolling. Diagnosis for MIL. Needed ASAP. Silence on the other end of the line. Then Roland's voice, tight and controlled. Miriam, that's conspiracy to commit fraud. That's a felony. What do we do? Nothing yet. We wait. Let them execute their plan. Let them file the paperwork. Then we present your evaluation from Dr. Voss and expose their fraudulent doctor. We'll request discovery, subpoena their phone records, their communications with this doctor, everything. If we can prove they paid someone to falsify a medical diagnosis, they're facing criminal charges. I felt a grim satisfaction settle over me. How long will that take? Depends on how fast they move. Could be days, could be weeks. But Miriam, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. Your son is going to be implicated. If he knew about the fraud, if he participated, he could face charges too. I thought about Garrett's expression in that video, the way he'd looked alarmed, tried to argue, then given in. Was he complicit or just weak? Either way, he'd made his choice, and I'd made mine. I'm ready, I told Roland. I've been ready since the moment she called me a leech. Good. Then let's give them enough rope to hang themselves. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying that footage in my mind. Skylar's calculating smile, Garrett's defeated posture, the text message that confirmed everything Roland and I had suspected. They were going to try to declare me incompetent. They were going to try to take everything I'd worked for. But they just handed me the evidence I needed to destroy them, and I wasn't going to waste it. I want to pause here for a moment. If you're watching this and you've ever felt overlooked, dismissed, or taken advantage of by people you loved, I see you. This isn't just my story. It's the story of every person who's been told they're too old, too much, or not enough. But here's the truth. You are never too old to stand up for yourself. You are never too much when you demand respect. And you are always enough, exactly as you are. If this story is resonating with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means the world, and stick around, because what happens next will shock you. Now let me tell you about the doctor's appointment that changed everything. Dr. Helena Voss's office was in a quiet, professional building overlooking Nantucket Sound. The waiting room smelled like lavender and had soft, classical music playing. I sat in one of the comfortable chairs, my hands folded in my lap, trying to calm my nerves. What if I failed? What if my age had caught up with me in ways I hadn't noticed? What if they were right, and I really was losing my mind? Mrs. Hartwell? A woman in her mid-50s, with kind brown eyes and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a low bun, stood in the doorway. "I'm Dr. Voss. Please come in." Her office was warm and welcoming, bookshelves lined with medical texts, a desk with framed photos of what looked like her family, 2 comfortable chairs facing each other. She gestured for me to sit. "Roland Finch explained the situation," she said gently. "I understand this is stressful. I want you to know that my evaluation is completely independent. I'm not here to prove anything one way or another. I'm just here to assess your current cognitive function. Does that make sense?" "Yes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Good. We'll spend about 3 hours together today. I'll ask you questions, give you some tasks to complete, test your memory and problem-solving skills. There are no right or wrong answers. Just answer honestly. Ready?" I nodded. The next 3 hours were intense. Dr. Voss started with basic questions. My name, the date, where I was, who the president was. Easy stuff. Then she moved into memory tests, recalling lists of words, repeating sequences of numbers, describing events from my past in detail. She gave me puzzles to solve, patterns to identify, hypothetical scenarios, and asked how I'd handle them. Some parts were easy, others made me work. But I never felt confused or lost. My mind felt sharp, engaged, alive in a way it hadn't in months. Finally, Dr. Voss put down her pen and smiled. "Mrs. Hartwell, I can confidently say you are of sound mind. Your cognitive function is excellent for your age, actually well above average. Your memory is intact. Your reasoning abilities are strong. Your capacity for independent decision-making is unimpaired." She paused. "There is no indication whatsoever of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or any other form of cognitive decline." I felt tears spring to my eyes. Relief, pure and overwhelming, washed through me. "Thank you," I whispered. "Miriam," Dr. Voss said, her voice firm but kind. "If someone is claiming otherwise, they're either mistaken or lying. And if they're lying, that's a very serious legal matter." She spent the next 30 minutes writing a detailed report, documenting every test, every result, every observation. When she finished, she signed it, dated it, and put the official seal of her practice on it. "Give this to Roland," she said, handing me the envelope. "This is your proof, your protection." I drove back to the motel with that envelope on the passenger seat beside me. I kept glancing at it, like it might disappear if I looked away too long. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope. Not just hope, power. I had evidence. I had proof. I had the legal documentation that would obliterate Skylar's lies. Now all I had to do was wait for her to make her move. And I knew she would. She was too greedy, too confident, too certain that she'd already won. She had no idea that I'd just loaded the gun that would end her. A week later, I got the envelope. It was delivered by a process server, a young man in his 20s who looked uncomfortable as he handed me the papers and asked me to sign for them. I stood in the doorway of my motel room, staring at the official seal, Barnstable Probate and Family Court. My hands shook as I opened it. Petition for appointment of guardian for allegedly incapacitated person. Petitioner, Garrett, Michael Hartwell. Respondent, Miriam Eleanor Hartwell. I had to sit down. My own son. His name right there in black ink, formally asking a court to declare me incompetent. I forced myself to keep reading. The petition claimed that I, Miriam Eleanor Hartwell, suffered from progressive dementia, rendering her unable to manage personal and financial affairs. It stated that I was a danger to myself, that I'd become confused and paranoid, that I could no longer be trusted to make sound decisions. And attached to the petition was a medical report from someone named Dr. Leon Crow, who claimed to have evaluated me and found me severely cognitively impaired with significant memory deficits and poor judgment. I'd never met Dr. Leon Crow in my life. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. This was it. This was the fraud Roland had predicted. They'd found a doctor willing to sign a false diagnosis, and they'd filed it with the court, under penalty of perjury, claiming it was true. I grabbed my phone and called Roland. He answered on the first ring. "They did it," I said, my voice trembling. "They filed. And Roland, they have a doctor's report, someone named Leon Crow claiming I'm severely impaired." "Read me the details," he said, his voice calm and focused. I read him everything, the petition, the diagnosis, the claims. When I finished, there was a pause. "Miriam, this is exactly what we needed. They've just committed medical fraud and perjury in a court document. That's a felony, multiple felonies actually. What do? Here's the plan. We file a response immediately, attaching Dr. Voss's evaluation. We request an evidentiary hearing. That means they'll have to present their evidence in court, and we'll present ours. We'll subpoena Dr. Crow's complete medical records, his communications with Schuyler and Garrett, his financial records. If he was paid to falsify this diagnosis, we'll find it." "What if the judge believes them?" "They won't. Not when they see two evaluations side by side. One from a respected psychiatrist with decades of experience and detailed documentation, and one from a doctor who never actually examined you. We'll destroy their credibility, and then we'll pursue criminal charges." I closed my eyes, trying to absorb it all. "Roland, what about Garrett? He signed this petition. He claimed under oath that I'm impaired." Roland's voice softened. "I know this is hard, but Miriam, your son has committed fraud against you. Whether he did it willingly or because Schuyler pressured him, he still did it. He's facing serious legal consequences. You need to decide. Are you going to protect yourself or protect him?" I thought about the little boy with the crooked Mother's Day cards. Then I thought about the grown man standing silent while his wife called me a leech. "I'm protecting myself," I said firmly. "File the response. I'll have it drafted by end of day. The hearing will probably be scheduled within 2 to 3 weeks. In the meantime, I'm also hiring a forensic accountant. I want to trace every penny you gave Garrett over the past 5 years. If Schuyler's been misusing those funds, that's financial exploitation of an elder. Another felony under Massachusetts law. Do it. All of it." When I hung up, I sat on the motel bed and stared at that court document. My son's signature stared back at me. I'd given him life. I'd given him everything. And this was how he repaid me. Fine. If he wanted a legal battle, he'd get one. But he was about to learn that his mother wasn't the confused old woman Schuyler had convinced him she was. I was Miriam Eleanor Hartwell, and I was done being a victim. Roland worked fast. Within 3 days, he'd assembled a team. A forensic accountant named Leona Price, a private investigator who specialized in communications surveillance, and a paralegal to handle the mountain of paperwork. They turned my case into a full-scale legal operation. I met Leona at Roland's office the following Monday. She was in her early 40s, dressed in a sharp blazer with reading glasses perched on her nose and 3 laptops open in front of her. "Mrs. Hartwell," she said, shaking my hand firmly, "I've been reviewing your bank records and the checks you wrote to your son over the past 5 years. I need you to walk me through what he told you each time he asked for money." I did. Every request, every excuse, every promise to pay me back that never materialized. Leona typed notes as I talked, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she turned one of her laptops toward me. "I've tracked where that money went. It's not pretty." She pulled up a spreadsheet with color-coded rows. My stomach dropped as I read the categories. Online gambling payments, $30,127, luxury retail purchases, $24,850, credit card debt payments, Bryn and Tate, $18,900, cash withdrawals, ATM, no clear destination, $12,000. The rest was scattered across restaurant bills, vacation rentals, and a car lease for Skylar's convertible. Mrs. Hartwell, Leona said gently, none of this money went to car repairs, medical bills, or emergency expenses. Not a single penny. Your son and his wife used you as a personal ATM to fund their lifestyle and Skylar's gambling addiction. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Garrett lied to me every single time. Yes, and under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 265, Section 49, this constitutes financial exploitation of an elder. It's a felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison and fines up to $50,000. 10 years. I tried to imagine my son in prison and felt nothing. No horror, no sympathy, just a cold, hollow numbness. That means, Leona continued, we can add criminal charges to the civil case. The district attorney will be very interested in this. Roland leaned forward. There's more. We subpoenaed Skylar's phone records and text messages. The judge approved it this morning based on the fraud allegations. We should have the records by end of week. What are you looking for? I asked. Communication between Skylar and Dr. Crow. If we can prove they coordinated the false diagnosis, that they discussed payment, that she coached him on what to write, that's conspiracy. That's a paper trail leading straight to criminal court. 3 days later, Roland called me at 7 in the morning. We got them. I was barely awake, but his tone snapped me to attention. What? The phone records just came through. Miriam, Skylar called Dr. Leon Crow 17 times in the past 6 weeks, and there are text messages, multiple text messages discussing the petition, the diagnosis, and, here's the smoking gun, payment. Read them to me. July 2nd, Skylar to Crow. How much to get a dementia diagnosis for Emile? Needed ASAP for court. Crow's response? $5,000 cash, no paper trail. Roland paused. July 8th, Skylar to Crow. Got the cash. When can you have the report ready? Crow. Give me 3 days. I'll make it convincing. I closed my eyes. There it was. Premeditated fraud. Conspiracy. All documented in their own words. There's more, Roland said. We've referred this to the state medical board. Dr. Crow is under investigation. His license will likely be suspended pending a full review. And the district attorney's office has opened a criminal investigation into both Skylar and Garrett for fraud, conspiracy, and elder exploitation. What about Garrett? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Is he mentioned in the messages? Yes. One text from Skylar to Crow says, Garrett's nervous, but I'm handling him. He'll sign whatever I tell him to sign. So Garrett had known. Maybe he'd been pressured. Maybe he'd been manipulated. But he'd known, and he'd done it anyway. When is the hearing? I asked. 2 weeks. Judge Martha Calloway. She's tough, fair, and she doesn't tolerate fraud. Miriam, we're going to win this. And when we do, they're going to face serious consequences. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something shift inside me. Not hope. I was beyond hope. This was something harder, colder, certainty. They'd tried to destroy me. They'd tried to steal everything I'd worked for. They'd tried to have me declared incompetent and lock me away in some facility where I'd die forgotten and alone. But they'd failed. And now they were going to pay. I couldn't stop watching the camera feeds. I knew I should step away, focus on preparing for the hearing, take care of myself. But I was addicted to it now, watching them move through my house, watching them live off my generosity while plotting my downfall. One night, about a week before the hearing, I saw something that broke the last fragile piece of my heart. It was late, almost midnight. Skylar and Garrett were in the living room. She was pacing, gesturing wildly, clearly agitated. Garrett sat on the couch, head in his hands. They were arguing. Even without sound, I could see the tension. Skylar pointed at him, her face twisted in anger. Garrett looked up, said something. She leaned down, got right in his face, and I could read her lips clearly. Don't you dare. Garrett stood up, took a step toward her, and for a moment I hoped he was going to finally stand up to her, tell her this had gone too far, tell her he couldn't do this to his mother. Instead, he crumpled. His shoulders sagged, his head dropped, and he sat back down. Skylar kept talking, her expression shifting from anger to something calculating. She sat beside him, put her hand on his knee, not affectionately, but possessively. She leaned in close and said something. Garrett closed his eyes. His whole body looked defeated. And then, slowly, he nodded. I watched my son surrender. Again. Still. Always. I called Roland the next morning. I saw them fighting last night. Garrett looked like he wanted to back out, but she talked him down. "Does that change anything for you?" Roland asked carefully. "Did it?" I thought about that question for a long time. Part of me, the mother part, the part that had rocked him through nightmares and cheered at his Little League games, wanted to forgive him, wanted to believe he was a victim too, manipulated and controlled by a predatory woman. But the other part of me, the part that had worked 2 jobs, saved every penny, built a life from nothing, that part knew the truth. Garrett was an adult. He'd made choices, bad choices, choices that hurt me, endangered me, tried to steal my autonomy and dignity. "No," I said finally. "It doesn't change anything. He's still signing the documents. He's still going along with it. Weak or not, manipulated or not, he made his choice." "I needed to hear you say that," Roland said gently, "because at the hearing, you're going to have to face him. You're going to have to sit across a courtroom and watch your son try to take everything from you, and you can't falter. You can't show mercy, not until this is over." "I won't," I promised. "I've given him 70 years of mercy. It's time I gave some to myself." That night, I sat at the small desk in my motel room and wrote a letter. Not to send, just to process, to organize my thoughts. I wrote to the Garrett who used to be, the little boy, the one I'd lost somewhere along the way. Dear Garrett, I don't know when I lost you. Was it when your father died? Was it when you met Skylar? Or was it something I did, some failure on my part that made you into someone who could do this to me? I've spent so many nights wondering if I could have saved you, if I should have said no more often, set boundaries earlier, refused to enable your choices. But I can't change the past, and I can't save you now. You have to save yourself. I hope someday you wake up. I hope someday you look in the mirror and recognize what you've become. And I hope, when that day comes, you find a way to forgive yourself, because I don't know if I ever will. Mom. I folded the letter and put it in my purse. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and tried to sleep. The hearing was in 6 days, and I was ready. Roland's office the day before the hearing looked like a war room. Documents covered every surface: evidence binders, legal briefs, witness statements. Roland's paralegal, a sharp young woman named Kendra, had organized everything with color-coded tabs and post-it notes. "All right, Miriam," Roland said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "Let's go through this one more time. Tomorrow you'll be called to testify. Skylar's attorney, a man named Vernon Pike, known for aggressive cross-examination, is going to try to shake you. He'll suggest you're confused, forgetful, paranoid. He'll try to make you look unreliable." "How do I handle that?" "Stay calm. Answer only what's asked. Don't elaborate. Don't get defensive. If he asks a yes or no question, answer yes or no. Don't explain unless he asks you to." Roland paused. "And Miriam, he's going to bring up the money. He's going to suggest that you're bitter, vindictive, that you're punishing Garrett for marrying someone you didn't approve of." I felt my jaw tighten. "But that's not—" "I know, but that's what he'll argue. So when he does, you look at the judge and you tell the truth. You gave that money freely because you loved your son and trusted him. You didn't know it was being used for gambling and luxury spending. You didn't know you were being exploited." I nodded. "What about Dr. Crow?" "We've subpoenaed him, but his attorney is fighting it, claims doctor-patient confidentiality. Judge Calloway will rule on that tomorrow morning. Even if we can't get him to testify, we have his text messages with Skylar. That's enough to establish fraud." Roland slid a thick binder across the desk. "This is everything. Dr. Voss's evaluation, the forensic accounting report, the camera footage, edited and time-stamped, the phone records and text messages, the deed and trust documents proving you own the house. Everything. I opened the binder and flipped through it. My life, reduced to evidence exhibits. Exhibit A, psychiatric evaluation. Exhibit B, financial exploitation analysis. Exhibit C, fraudulent medical report. Are we going to win? I asked. Roland met my eyes. Miriam, I've been practicing law for 30 years. I've seen hundreds of cases, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, their case is garbage. They have a fraudulent medical report from a doctor under investigation, purchased with cash by a woman with a documented gambling problem. We have an independent psychiatric evaluation from one of the most respected doctors on the Cape, a forensic accounting report proving financial exploitation, and text messages proving conspiracy. He leaned forward. Yes, we're going to win. And then what happens to them? Judge Calloway will deny the guardianship petition. Then she'll refer the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Skylar will be arrested and charged with fraud, conspiracy, and elder exploitation. Garrett, depending on the DA's assessment of his involvement, could face charges too, though he might get a plea deal if he cooperates. I thought about Garrett in handcuffs, my son arrested, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, just a grim satisfaction that justice would finally be served. I'm ready, I told Roland. Let's do this. He smiled, that cold, strategic smile. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Barnstable Probate Court. Wear something comfortable but respectful. Bring your medications and a bottle of water. And Miriam? Yes? When you walk into that courtroom, hold your head high. You're not a victim, you're a survivor. And tomorrow the whole world is going to see that. Before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, I want to say something. If you're going through a situation where someone is trying to control you, manipulate you, or take what's yours, know this: you have more power than you think. The law exists to protect people like us. Don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to fight back. And don't ever let anyone make you feel small. If this story is giving you strength, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going, because what happens next is the moment everything changed. Now let me tell you about the day I walked into that courtroom and took my life back. The morning of the hearing, my phone rang at 6 a.m. Roland. Miriam, we got something big. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. What? The investigator did a deep dive on Skylar's phone records, not just the texts we already had, but call logs, location data, everything, and he found something we weren't looking for. What? Roland paused. Miriam, Skylar's been having an affair with Dr. Crow. The room tilted. What? The phone records show dozens of calls between them, starting 8 months ago, long before the guardianship petition, and there are text messages. Personal ones, intimate ones. He paused again. There's one from 3 weeks ago, after they'd finalized the fake diagnosis. Skylar texted him. Once this is done and I get the house, we can finally be together. Garrett's too stupid to notice. Dr. Crow replied, Can't wait, babe. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She was planning to leave Garrett after using him to steal from me? Yes, this wasn't just about the money, Miriam. This was about Skylar getting the house, getting access to your assets through guardianship, then divorcing Garrett and running off with Dr. Crow. I thought about my son, weak, manipulated Garrett, who'd betrayed his own mother for a woman who was already planning to betray him. Does Garrett know? I asked. I doubt it. And Miriam, we're going to tell him, today, in court, in front of everyone. Roland, I know this is your son. I know this is painful. But this evidence destroys Skylar's credibility completely. It proves she's been lying to everyone. You, Garrett, the court. It proves she's the mastermind behind everything. And it might be enough to convince the DA to go easy on Garrett if he cooperates. I closed my eyes. Part of me felt vindicated. Skylar wasn't just greedy. She was evil. She'd manipulated my son, stolen from me, tried to have me declared incompetent, and planned to abandon Garrett the moment she got what she wanted. But part of me felt something else, something I didn't want to acknowledge. Pity. For Garrett. For the fool he'd been. "Use it," I told Roland. "Tell everyone. Let the truth come out." "We will. I'll present it during cross-examination of Skylar, assuming Pike is stupid enough to put her on the stand. Miriam, this is the final nail in their coffin. After today, it's over." I arrived at Barnstable Probate Court at 8:30. The building was old, brick and white columns, with marble steps leading to heavy wooden doors. Roland met me in the lobby, briefcase in hand, looking sharp in a navy suit. "You ready?" he asked. "I've been ready for weeks." We walked through the metal detector, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and entered courtroom 3B. It was smaller than I'd expected, rows of wooden benches, a judge's bench at the front, 2 tables for the attorneys. And there, at the opposite table, sat Skylar and Garrett with their attorney, Vernon Pike. Skylar looked polished, designer dress, perfect hair, calm expression. Garrett looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled shirt, hands clasped tightly in his lap. He glanced up as I walked in. Our eyes met, and for just a moment I saw something in his expression. Guilt? Regret? Fear? I looked away and took my seat. Judge Martha Calloway entered, a woman in her 60s with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes. She sat, arranged her papers, and looked out at the courtroom. "Let's begin," she said. "Case number 24P11847, petition for guardianship. Mr. Pike, you may present your opening statement." And the battle began. Vernon Pike stood, buttoning his suit jacket with the practiced ease of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, with a voice like honey over gravel. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a heartbreaking case. A loving son, watching his elderly mother decline, watching her become confused, paranoid, unable to care for herself. Garrett Hartwell doesn't want to do this. He loves his mother, but he has a duty to protect her, from herself if necessary." I kept my face neutral, but inside I was seething. "Mrs. Miriam Hartwell," Pike continued, "is 70 years old. She's exhibited signs of cognitive decline, forgetfulness, irrational accusations against family members, poor financial judgment. She's become isolated, withdrawn. Her own daughter-in-law has expressed concern, and a medical professional, Dr. Leon Crow, has evaluated her and found significant impairment." He gestured to the stack of papers on his table. "We're not here out of greed or malice. We're here out of love, out of concern, out of a desperate need to ensure that Mrs. Hartwell is safe, cared for, and protected in her final years." He sat down. Judge Calloway made a note, then looked at Roland. "Mr. Finch?" Roland stood. He didn't button his jacket, didn't smile, didn't try to charm the room. He just looked at the judge and spoke with quiet, lethal precision. "Your Honor, this petition is a fraud." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Mrs. Miriam Hartwell is not impaired. She is not confused. She is not in need of protection. She is, in fact, a victim of financial exploitation, manipulation, and a coordinated scheme to steal her property and assets. Pike started to rise. "Your Honor, this is—" Judge Calloway raised a hand. "Sit down, Mr. Pike. You had your turn." Pike sat. Roland continued. "We will present an independent psychiatric evaluation conducted by Dr. Helena Voss, one of the most respected geriatric psychiatrists in Massachusetts. Dr. Voss evaluated Mrs. Hartwell thoroughly and found her to be of sound mind, cognitively sharp, fully capable of making her own decisions." Roland picked up a document from his table. "We will also present evidence that Dr. Leon Crow never actually examined Mrs. Hartwell, that he fabricated his diagnosis in exchange for $5,000 cash paid by the petitioner's wife, Skylar Hartwell. We have text messages, phone records, financial transactions, all proving conspiracy to commit fraud." The courtroom was dead silent. Even Pike looked stunned. "Furthermore," Roland said, his voice hardening. "We will present evidence that Mrs. Hartwell has been financially exploited by her son and daughter-in-law to the tune of over $75,000, money taken under false pretenses and used for gambling, luxury purchases, and personal expenses. This is not a guardianship case, Your Honor. This is elder abuse." Judge Calloway's expression was unreadable. She made several notes, then looked up. "Mr. Finch, those are serious allegations. I assume you have evidence to support them?" "Extensive evidence, Your Honor, and we're prepared to present every page of it." "Then let's proceed." Judge Calloway looked at Pike. "Mr. Pike, call your first witness." Pike stood, visibly rattled. "Your Honor, the petitioner calls Garrett Hartwell to the stand." My son stood up, and for the first time in weeks, I looked directly at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Garrett's testimony was painful to watch. He sat in the witness box, hunched over, speaking in a monotone as Pike walked him through prepared questions. How I'd become forgetful, how I'd made strange accusations, how I'd refused to listen to reason. It was all lies, coached lies, and Garrett delivered them like a hostage reading a script. When Pike finished, Roland stood for cross-examination. He didn't attack, he just asked simple questions. "Mr. Hartwell, when was the last time you saw your mother in person before this petition was filed?" Garrett hesitated. 3 months ago, maybe?" 3 months. And in that interaction, did your mother seem confused or impaired?" "Well, not exactly, but yes or no, please." "No." "Did she forget who you were?" "No." "Did she have trouble communicating?" "No." "Did she exhibit any signs of dementia or cognitive decline?" Garrett looked at Skylar. She stared back, her expression icy. I don't know. Skylar said—" "I'm not asking what Skylar said. I'm asking what you observed. Did you personally witness any cognitive impairment in your mother?" A long pause. "No." Roland let that hang in the air. Then he thanked Garrett and sat down. Judge Calloway excused Garrett. He practically fled the witness box. "Your Honor," Roland said, "the defense calls Dr. Helena Voss." Dr. Voss entered, calm and professional. She was sworn in and took the stand. Roland walked her through her credentials. Decades of experience, hundreds of evaluations, recognition by the state medical board. Then he asked her to describe her evaluation of me. "Mrs. Hartwell underwent a comprehensive neuropsychological assessment," Dr. Voss explained. "I tested memory, executive function, decision-making capacity, problem-solving abilities. The evaluation lasted 3 hours and covered multiple cognitive domains." "And your findings?" "Mrs. Hartwell's cognitive function is excellent for her age. In fact, it's above average. Her memory is intact. Her reasoning is clear. Her capacity for independent decision-making is fully preserved. There is no evidence of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or any other form of cognitive impairment." "In your professional opinion, does Mrs. Hartwell require a guardian?" "Absolutely not. She is fully capable of managing her own affairs." Pike stood for cross-examination. "Dr. Voss, isn't it possible that Mrs. Hartwell was simply having a good day when you evaluated her?" Dr. Voss smiled slightly, the smile of an expert who'd heard that question 100 times. "The tests I administered are specifically designed to detect inconsistencies and variability. Mrs. Hartwell's results were consistent across multiple domains over a 3-hour period. A good day doesn't account for that level of sustained performance. But cognitive decline can be episodic, not in the way you're suggesting. If Mrs. Hartwell had significant impairment, it would have shown up in the testing. It didn't." Pike tried a few more angles, but Dr. Voss was unshakable. Finally, he sat down, clearly frustrated. Judge Calloway looked at the courtroom. "Mr. Pike, do you have any other witnesses?" Pike stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to call Dr. Leon Crow." Roland stood immediately. "Your Honor, Dr. Crow is currently under investigation by the State Medical Board for fraudulent practices. We have documentation." Judge Calloway held up a hand. "Mr. Finch, I'll hear from Dr. Crow if he appears. Mr. Pike, is your witness present?" Pike glanced at the door. No one entered. "Your Honor, Dr. Crow has declined to appear." A ripple of murmurs went through the courtroom. "I see." Judge Calloway said dryly. Then let's move on. Your Honor, Roland said, the defense calls Miriam Hartwell. I stood, my legs shaky, and walked to the witness box. I was sworn in, placed my hand on the Bible, and promised to tell the truth. Then I sat down and looked out at the courtroom. Garrett wouldn't meet my eyes. Schuyler stared at me with cold hatred. Roland approached, his voice gentle. Mrs. Hartwell, can you tell the court what happened when you arrived at your Cape Cod beach house on July 14th? I took a breath and told the truth. I walked in and found my daughter-in-law, her siblings, and my son there. I didn't know they were coming. I hadn't given them permission to use the house. Schuyler looked at me and said, "Why is this old leech here? There's no room for you." My son said nothing. I left. Did you give them permission to be there? No. Did you ever express intent to give them the house? No. I built that house with my own savings in 1985. It's held in a revocable living trust, with me as sole trustee. I'm the only person with legal authority over it during my lifetime. Roland nodded. Mrs. Hartwell, the petition claims you've been giving your son money irresponsibly. Can you address that? I looked at Garrett. He was staring at his hands. Over the past 5 years, I gave my son $75,000. Every time he told me it was an emergency. Car repairs, medical bills, roof leaks. I believed him because I trusted him, because he's my son. Did you know how that money was actually being used? No. I found out later through a forensic accounting report that it went to Schuyler's gambling debts, luxury shopping, and paying off her siblings' credit cards. My voice cracked. I thought I was helping my son. I was being exploited. Roland let that sit for a moment. Then he asked, Did you ever meet Dr. Leon Crow? No, never. I'd never heard his name until I received the court petition. So he never examined you? No. Roland thanked me and sat down. Pike stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Hartwell, he said, his voice smooth, isn't it true that you've always disapproved of your daughter-in-law? I met his eyes. I sensed something was wrong. I was right. But you were jealous, weren't you? Angry that your son had married someone else? No, I wanted him to be happy. I still do. Yet you're here trying to destroy his marriage. I'm here, I said, my voice steady. Because they tried to destroy me. They tried to have me declared incompetent so they could steal my home and my autonomy. I'm here because I refuse to be a victim. Pike tried a few more questions, but I didn't waver. Finally, he sat down. Judge Calloway looked at Roland. Mr. Finch, do you have any further witnesses? One more, Your Honor. But first, I'd like to introduce Exhibit F, phone records and text messages between Schuyler Hartwell and Dr. Leon Crow. He handed the documents to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. Judge Calloway read in silence, her expression darkening with each page. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Pike, did you know about this? Pike stood, looking genuinely confused. Your Honor, I have no idea what these text messages, Judge Calloway said, her voice cold, show that your client's wife paid Dr. Crow $5,000 to falsify a medical diagnosis. That is fraud, Mr. Pike. Felony fraud. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Garrett's head snapped up. What? Schuyler's face went white, and Roland smiled. Judge Calloway banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Finch, I assume you have more? Yes, Your Honor. Roland stood, holding a single sheet of paper. I'd like to read one more text message into the record. This one is dated July 10th. Schuyler Hartwell to Dr. Leon Crow. Once this is done and I get the house, we can finally be together. Garrett's too stupid to notice. The silence that followed was deafening. Roland continued, his voice measured. Dr. Crow's reply. Can't wait, babe. Just a few more weeks and you'll be free. Garrett made a strangled sound. He turned to Schuyler, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. What is he talking about? Schuyler's composure cracked. Garrett, that's not... He's twisting it. Ms. Hartwell, Judge Calloway said sharply, you are not under oath at this moment. I suggest you remain silent. But the damage was done. Garrett stood up, knocking his chair back. You were cheating on me? With the doctor? The one who... He looked at the judge, at Roland, at me. Oh my God, she played me. She played all of us. Pike grabbed Garrett's arm. Mr. Hartwell, sit down. Don't say anything else. But Garrett shook him off. No, I'm done. Your Honor, I didn't know about the affair. I didn't know about the fake diagnosis. Skylar told me Dr. Crow was legitimate, that Mom really was sick. She said we had to act fast, or Mom would lose everything. I believed her. Mr. Hartwell, Judge Calloway said, her tone slightly softer. I suggest you consult with your attorney before you say anything else. I don't care anymore. Garrett turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I was so stupid. I let her convince me. I let her turn me against you. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared. Scared of losing her. Scared of being alone. And I chose her over you. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. I stared at my son. Part of me wanted to forgive him right there, to run to him and hold him like I had when he was a boy. But the other part, the part that had been humiliated, exploited, nearly destroyed, held me in place. Garrett, I said quietly, I believe you, but believing you and trusting you are two different things. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand. Judge Calloway looked at Skylar. Ms. Hartwell, do you have anything to say? Skylar stood slowly, her hands clenched into fists. This is insane. Those text messages are taken out of context. Leon and I are friends, that's all. And as for the money, Garrett gave me that money willingly. His mother has plenty. She's just bitter and vindictive. Ms. Hartwell, Roland said, his voice cutting, we have 17 recorded phone calls between you and Dr. Crow, multiple text messages discussing payment for a fraudulent diagnosis, and financial records showing a $5,000 cash withdrawal from your joint account the same week Dr. Crow produced his report. We also have forensic evidence that you used $75,000 of Mrs. Hartwell's money for gambling debts and personal expenses. He paused. Would you like to continue claiming this is out of context? Skylar's lawyer stood. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to consult with my client. Denied, Judge Calloway said. I've heard enough. She looked at Skylar with open disgust. Ms. Hartwell, you have committed fraud, conspiracy, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I am denying this petition for guardianship immediately. Mrs. Miriam Hartwell is clearly of sound mind and requires no guardian. She banged her gavel. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Bailiff, please escort Ms. Skylar Hartwell into custody, pending arraignment. 2 uniformed officers stepped forward. Skylar's eyes went wide. Wait, what? You can't... Ms. Hartwell, you are being detained on suspicion of fraud and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. As they read her rights and placed her in handcuffs, Skylar twisted to look at Garrett. This is your fault. You were supposed to handle your mother. You weak, pathetic... The officers led her away. Her voice echoed down the hallway until a door slammed shut. The courtroom was silent. Judge Calloway looked at me. Mrs. Hartwell, I apologize for what you've endured. Your home, your assets, and your autonomy are fully restored. This court finds no evidence of impairment whatsoever. Thank you, Your Honor, I said, my voice steady despite the tears running down my face. As the judge dismissed the court and people began filing out, I sat in the witness box and let myself cry. Not from sadness, from relief, from vindication, from the pure, overwhelming knowledge that I had fought back and won. After the judge left, the courtroom slowly cleared. Roland packed up his briefcase, exchanging quiet words with the prosecutor who'd been observing from the back row. Pike gathered his papers and left without a word, probably already drafting a motion to withdraw from the case. Garrett sat alone at the petitioner's table, head in his hands. I stood up from the witness box and walked toward him. Roland touched my arm. Miriam, are you sure? I need to do this. I stopped a few feet from Garrett's table. He looked up, his face blotchy and red from crying. Mom, he said, his voice raw. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know I'm filing for divorce. Today, I'm going to get help, therapy, Whatever it takes, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. I studied him. The boy I'd raised was in there somewhere, buried under years of bad choices and manipulation. But he was still my son. Garrett, I said slowly, I love you. I always will. But I can't go back to the way things were. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be on my terms. No more lies, no more taking advantage, and you have to prove yourself, not with words, but with actions. I will, he said. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see. I paused. The district attorney is going to investigate you too. If you were complicit in the fraud, I'll cooperate. Fully. I'll tell them everything. And if I have to face consequences, I'll accept them. He looked at me with something like hope in his eyes. Maybe this is what I needed. Rock bottom. A chance to finally be the man you raised me to be. I didn't answer. I just nodded and walked away. Roland was waiting by the door. How do you feel? Exhausted, relieved, sad. I looked back at Garrett, still sitting alone at that table. I don't know if we'll ever be okay again. You did the right thing. For yourself. That's what matters. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun was bright and warm. I stood on the marble steps and breathed in the salt air from the harbor. Roland stood beside me. The DA's office will be in touch. They'll want your full statement, and they'll likely offer Garrett a plea deal if he testifies against Skylar. What will happen to her? Fraud, conspiracy, financial exploitation. She's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. Maybe more if they find additional charges. Dr. Crow is already cooperating, trying to save his medical license. He'll probably testify against her too. Good. I meant it. No mercy, no second chances. Skylar had tried to destroy me, and she'd pay for it. What about the house? I asked. Roland smiled. It's yours, always has been. I'll file for a restraining order against Skylar and her siblings. They won't be allowed within 500 feet of your property. I closed my eyes and let the sun warm my face, my house, my life, my freedom, all mine again. 3 weeks later, I stood in the parking lot of the Barnstable County Correctional Facility and watched as Skylar Hartwell was led out in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. The district attorney had moved fast. Skylar had been arraigned, denied bail due to flight risk, and formally charged with 10 counts, including fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and financial exploitation of an elder. Her arraignment had been brief. She'd pleaded not guilty, glared at everyone in the courtroom, and been led back to her cell. Dr. Leon Crow had already pleaded guilty in exchange for testifying against Skylar. His medical license was suspended pending a full hearing, and he was facing 18 months in prison plus fines. Garrett had cooperated fully with the investigation. The DA had determined that while he'd been complicit, he'd also been manipulated and coerced. He'd accepted a plea deal, probation, community service, mandatory therapy, and full restitution of the $75,000 he'd taken from me. The restitution would take years, paid out in monthly installments, but I didn't care about the money anymore. I cared about the accountability. Roland stood beside me as we watched the transport van drive away with Skylar inside. She'll serve at least 5 years, he said. Maybe more if she causes trouble inside. What about Bryn and Tate? They were questioned. No charges. They didn't participate in the fraud directly, but they're banned from your property under the restraining order. I nodded. Good. We drove back to Roland's office, where he handed me a thick envelope. The deed and trust documents, updated and notarized. Your house is secure, and I've prepared a new power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and updated will, just to be safe. No one can challenge your capacity now. I opened the envelope and flipped through the documents. My name, my property, my life. Thank you, Roland, for everything. You fought for yourself, Miriam. I just helped you do it legally. He smiled. What's next for you? I thought about that. For so long, my life had been defined by other people. My husband, my son, my work. I'd spent 70 years taking care of everyone else, sacrificing my own needs, my own dreams, my own peace. I'm going home, I said. To my house. I'm going to clean it, repair the damage they did, and make it mine again. And then I'm going to live. Just live. For myself. You deserve that, Roland said. I left his office and drove to Cape Cod. The afternoon was bright and clear, the ocean sparkling under the sun. When I pulled into the driveway of my beach house, I sat in the car for a moment, just looking at it. Mine. Fought for. Reclaimed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house still smelled stale, still showed signs of damage, but it was empty now. Silent. Waiting. I opened all the windows, letting the sea breeze blow through. Then I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. Cleaning, scrubbing, reclaiming every inch of space that had been violated. And as I worked, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. It took me a week to make the house feel like mine again. I hired professionals to deep clean the carpets, repair the damaged furniture, repaint the walls. I replaced the ruined rug, bought new linens, restocked the kitchen. And slowly, room by room, the house transformed back into the sanctuary I'd built all those years ago. One evening, I sat on the deck with a cup of tea, watching the sun set over the Atlantic. The waves rolled in, steady and eternal. Gulls called overhead. The air smelled like salt and possibility. My phone buzzed. A text from Garrett. Mom, I moved into a small apartment in Hyannis, filed for divorce, starting therapy next week. I know I have a long way to go, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I'm glad. Take care of yourself. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was acknowledgement. A door left open, just a crack. Another text came through, this one from Roland. Skylar's trial is set for November. DA expects a conviction. You'll need to testify, but it should be straightforward. How are you holding up? I typed back, I'm good, really good, and I meant it. I thought about everything that had happened, the humiliation, the betrayal, the fear that I'd lose everything I'd worked for, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was really losing my mind, if I really was the problem. But I hadn't been the problem. I'd been the target, and I'd fought back. I thought about all the women like me, women who'd spent their lives giving, sacrificing, putting everyone else first, women who were told they were too old, too difficult, too much, women who were exploited by the very people who were supposed to love them. I wanted them to know what I'd learned. You are never too old to fight back. You are never too much when you demand respect. You are always enough, exactly as you are. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I finished my tea and went inside. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine. I walked through each room, running my fingers along the walls I'd painted, the furniture I'd chosen, the photographs I'd hung. Memories of a life built with my own hands. In the bedroom, I opened the safe and took out my mother's jewelry. Her wedding ring, the necklace she'd worn every day, the bracelet she'd given me before she died. I put on the necklace and looked at myself in the mirror. An old woman stared back, silver hair, lined face, 70 years of life etched into every wrinkle. But I didn't see someone diminished. I saw someone who'd survived, someone who'd stood up, someone who'd reclaimed her life against all odds. I smiled at my reflection. You did it, Miriam, I whispered. You actually did it. And for the first time in a very long time, I was proud of myself. 2 months later, my phone rang on a Saturday morning. Garrett's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Mom? His voice was different, steadier, clearer. I know I don't deserve your time, but I've been in therapy, like I said, and my therapist suggested I call, not to ask for anything, just to tell you some things I need to say. I'm listening. I've been thinking about what I did, really thinking about it. And I realize now that I didn't just betray you once. I betrayed you over and over for years. Every time I asked you for money and lied about why I needed it. Every time I let Skylar talk about you like you were a burden. Every time I chose her over you. He paused. I was weak and selfish, and I hurt the one person who'd always been there for me. I sat down on the couch, staring out at the ocean. "I'm not calling to ask you to forgive me," Garrett continued. "I'm calling to say I'm sorry, and to tell you that I'm trying to become someone you'd be proud of, someone I can be proud of." "Garrett," I said slowly, "I appreciate that, I do, but you're right. You hurt me, deeply, and trust isn't something you can just rebuild with an apology." "I know. That's why I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did, and I'm working on it." "Good." I paused. "If you want a relationship with me, it has to be on my terms. No more lies. No more taking advantage. You prove yourself through actions, not words. And it might take years, or it might never happen. I don't know yet." "I understand," he said quietly. "Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." "Then keep working on yourself, and maybe someday we'll talk again." "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me completely." I hung up and sat in the silence, the phone still warm in my hand. Did I believe him? I wanted to. Part of me would always want to, but I'd learned the hard way that love wasn't enough. That family didn't give you the right to hurt people without consequences. That I had to protect myself first, even from the people I loved most. Maybe Garrett would change. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I'd be okay, because I'd already chosen myself, and nothing, no one, was ever going to take that away from me again. So that's my story. I stood up, I fought back, and I won, not just in court, but for myself. If you're facing something similar, remember this: you are stronger than you think. Don't let anyone dim your light. Don't let anyone steal your peace. You deserve respect. You deserve dignity. You deserve to live on your own terms. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved? I'd love to hear your story. Thank you for being here with me. You're never too old to choose yourself first.